People were starting to say it's an East Coast, West Coast rivalry because it was people that's trying to make money. It was true people trying to make careers. It was people trying to get famous.
You know, when it comes to rewriting history, it's some trying to rewrite history.
It's the treachery no one anticipated, the turn of events that has left even the most devoted enthusiasts of hip-hop in shock. After decades of speculation surrounding the untimely end of Shakur, new revelations have brought an unexpected name into the spotlight: Snoop Dogg. Yes, the same Snoop who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Shakur during the golden era of DRR is now being implicated in a web of connections that could tie him directly to the fateful events of 1996. The whispers have turned into a roar. Could it really be true? Could one of hip-hop's most iconic figures have played a role in bringing down another?
I'm not the guy who's in for Puffy's downfall, but I am the guy who supports the victims who got victimized.
We now know that law enforcement has reopened parts of Shakur's legacy, including his business dealings, and shocking evidence has reportedly surfaced. Snoop Dogg, a man who was once seen as Shakur's ally, is now being named as a potential conspirator in the plot that ended one of music's brightest stars. But what's even more explosive is the claim that Snoop wasn't acting alone. Allegedly, his collaboration with Sean Diddy Combs, another towering name in the industry, may have been the key to orchestrating what many believe was a coordinated effort to remove Shakur from the picture. And if these allegations hold any truth, this could be the final piece of the puzzle in a story that has haunted hip-hop fans for nearly 30 years. The history between Shakur and Snoop was complicated, to say the least. On the surface, they appeared to be brothers in arms, two West Coast legends united under the banner of Death Row Records. But insiders have always whispered about the cracks in their relationship. Could jealousy have played a role? Shakur was at the height of his power, unstoppable, charismatic, and redefining what it meant to be a star. Meanwhile, Snoop, though wildly successful, had begun to fade into the background of Shakur's meteoric rise. Was Snoop, the dog father himself, quietly working to ensure that Shakur's dominance didn't overshadow his own legacy? And if so, how deep did his alleged betrayal go?
Stop letting these people use you, man. You didn't want to be pushing Death Row, you was on Death Row. That's not neither here nor there.
Enter Suge Knight, the ever-controversial former head of Death Row Records, who has now reignited the fire with his explosive claims from behind bars. According to Suge, Snoop not only turned his back on Shakur, but actively worked to protect individuals tied to the plan that brought him down. Suge has pointed fingers at Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a name now synonymous with Shakur's case, claiming that Snoop sought to shield him. Keefe D, for those who may not know, is widely believed to be one of the key figures in the drive-by incident that shook the world on that fateful night in Las Vegas. Suge's allegations go even further, suggesting that Snoop's actions during the infamous East Coast-West Coast feud weren't just about survival. They were part of a calculated move to align himself with Diddy and Bad Boy Records. And this isn't just idle gossip. Suge's words carry weight. From his prison cell, he's become a sort of dark oracle for the secrets of the hip-hop world. He knows the players, the power struggles, the deals made in whispers that never saw the light of day. Suge claims that Snoop's jealousy of Shakur wasn't only personal, it was strategic. Shakur's dominance at Death Row threatened to eclipse everyone, even Snoop. And while Shakur openly declared war on Bad Boy Records, Snoop's actions during that time told a different story. Was he secretly aligning himself with Diddy, even as Shakur and Suge waged an all-out battle against him?
I'm quite sure I am Death Row. Suge Knight is Death Row. So I'm quite sure, before it's said and done, all eyes on me and Makaveli out of pockets are definitely come back to me.
We have to ask ourselves, how much of Snoop's friendly demeanor was an act? Was he playing both sides all along? And if so, what did he stand to gain? Some believe that Snoop, feeling overshadowed and underappreciated at Death Row, saw an opportunity to secure his own position by collaborating with the very people Shakur had declared enemies. After all, Snoop famously distanced himself from Shakur's more aggressive stance against Bad Boy during interviews. At the time, it was written off as Snoop taking the high road. But now, in light of Suge's accusations, it raises the question, was it strategy, not morality, that guided Snoop's words?
Keefe D named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac's.
Suge's bombshells don't stop there. In one particularly scathing interview, he accused Snoop of trying to bail out Keefe D, the man who has openly admitted to having a hand in Shakur's demise. According to Suge, Snoop and others were working behind the scenes to secure Keefe D's release, not out of compassion, but out of fear. Fear of what Keefe D might reveal if pressed further. Suge even hinted that Snoop and Diddy had a vested interest in keeping certain details buried. Details that could implicate them in ways we can only imagine. Think about it for a moment. If Keefe D truly knows more than he's led on, and if Snoop was involved in trying to silence him, What does that say about the dog father's role in all of this? Could this be the ultimate act of self-preservation? And where does Diddy fit into the picture? Let's not forget, there have long been rumors that Diddy himself offered a substantial sum of money, millions according to some accounts, for the elimination of both Shakur and Suge. The ties between these players are tangled, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The story we thought we knew about Shakur's final days may be far more sinister than we ever imagined.
He's 3 law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
And what about the new evidence reportedly unearthed in Shakur's reopened business dealings? Sources claim that law enforcement is closing in on a connection that could directly implicate Snoop. Could this be the smoking gun that brings decades of speculation to an end? Could we see the Dogfather himself face legal consequences for his alleged role in one of the most infamous moments in music history? It's almost too surreal to believe, but as the pieces fall into place, the narrative becomes harder to dismiss.
Right now, Davis is fighting for bail ahead of his trial, which he has pleaded not.
Snoop Dogg has always maintained his innocence, presenting himself as a peace-loving figure who wanted no part in the East Coast v. West Coast chaos. But the cracks in that facade are beginning to show. Even Suge, who has no love for Diddy, has made it clear that Snoop's actions during and after Shakur's reign at death row were suspect. He's accused Snoop of rewriting history, of trying to paint himself as a victim or an outsider when, in reality, he may have been one of the masterminds all along.
If you look at it, they committed fraud. They committed bankruptcy fraud. I didn't lose my company by doing anything wrong.
And it doesn't end there. Suge has also alleged that Snoop's ownership of Death Row Records is a sham, a publicity stunt with no real substance. He's challenged Snoop to produce the paperwork to prove that he owns the label that once represented everything Shakur stood for. Could this be another layer of the story, a power grab disguised as nostalgia? If Suge is to be believed, Snoop's entire narrative is built on shaky ground. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of all this is the possibility that Snoop's betrayal of Shakur wasn't just about jealousy or power, it was about survival. In a world as cutthroat as the music industry, especially during the volatile 1990s, alliances shifted like quicksand. Did Snoop see the writing on the wall and make a choice that would secure his future no matter the cost? And if so, how far was he willing to go? These are the questions that keep us up at night, the questions that demand answers.
See, where I'm going with this, Snoop, stop letting these people use you, man.
What we do know is this: the walls are closing in. With Suge Knight's accusations gaining traction, Keefe D's trial looming, and law enforcement reportedly circling Snoop, the truth feels closer than ever. But as we dig deeper into this tangled web of betrayal, power, and ambition, one thing becomes painfully clear. This story is far from over, but the twists don't stop there. The drama surrounding Snoop Dogg's alleged connection to Shakur's tragic end takes an even darker turn when we look at his ownership of Death Row Records. On the surface, Snoop's acquisition of the label in 2022 seemed like a full-circle moment, a triumphant return to the empire where his career began. He proudly announced that Death Row was back in the hands of someone who understood its legacy, promising to honor the history while building a brighter future. But according to Suge Knight, this wasn't a heartfelt business move. No, Suge has alleged that Snoop's ownership of Death Row is not only fraudulent, but part of a calculated plan to rewrite history and possibly bury the truth. Let's break this down. Suge, who was once at the helm of Death Row, has repeatedly questioned the legitimacy of Snoop's ownership. He claims that Snoop has failed to provide proof of purchase, no paperwork, no receipts, and no transparency. If Suge's accusations are true, it raises a critical question. What is Snoop really hiding? Could his accusation of the label be less about honoring Shakur's legacy and more about controlling the narrative? Death Row's archives are said to hold a treasure trove of unreleased tracks, internal documents, and business records from the 1990s. If Snoop now controls all of that, is it possible that he's using his position to suppress information that might connect him to the events that led to Shakur's final moment?
So we made the business decision to be cool with each other, because I don't hate him, and he don't hate me.
And let's not forget, Suge has also accused Snoop of destroying Death Row's legacy. He's claimed that Snoop's leadership has turned the once dominant label into a shadow of its former self, releasing projects that failed to live up to the label's iconic reputation. But what if this alleged failure isn't just about bad business decisions? What if it's part of a larger strategy to keep eyes off the label, to make sure no one looks too closely at what's really going on behind the scenes? After all, controlling Death Row means controlling the story of Shakur, Snoop, and the entire East Coast for his West Coast feud. And if Snoop's role in that story is darker than we ever imagined, it makes sense that he'd want to keep certain details out of the public eye. Now let's turn to the Keefe D connection, because this is where the story takes an even more sinister turn. Suge Knight has openly accused Snoop of working behind the scenes to protect Dwayne Keefe D Davis, the man who has been directly tied to Shakur's case. Keefe D has admitted to being present during the drive-by that took Shakur's life. He's even claimed that his own nephew, Orlando Anderson, was the one who pulled the trigger. So why would Snoop, who was once so close to Shakur, allegedly go out of his way to help a man like Keefe D?
As if I was scared. Death Row looked at me as like a traitor. The next day.
Suge's theory is chilling. Keefe D knows too much. According to Suge, Snoop's alleged efforts to bail out Keefe D weren't about kindness or justice, they were about self-preservation. If Keefe D were to cooperate fully with authorities, he might reveal secrets that could implicate Snoop in ways we can't even fathom. Could it be that Snoop has spent years working to silence the people who know the truth? And if so, how much longer can this alleged cover-up last? Keefe D's trial is fast approaching, and with it, the possibility that he'll reveal everything he knows. Is Snoop's carefully constructed image about to crumble? And let's not forget the eerie connection between Diddy and Keefe D that's also resurfaced in recent years. Law enforcement documents have alleged that Diddy, at the height of his rivalry with Death Row Records, may have offered a substantial amount of money to Keefe D and his associates to take care of both Shakur and Suge Knight. While these claims have never been proven in court, they paint a troubling picture of the lengths some in the industry may have gone to protect their positions. Could Snoop's alleged involvement with Keefe D tie back to this web of deals and betrayals? If Keefe D is holding on to secrets that implicate Diddy, Snoop, or anyone else, his cooperation with authorities could ignite a domino effect that shakes the entire foundation of the hip-hop world.
And Tupac's a legend. Like I said, Tupac wasn't born, he was sent to us.
It also raises questions about Snoop's motivations during the East Coast-West Coast feud. At a time when tensions were at their peak, Snoop's decision to publicly distance himself from Shakur's aggressive stance on Bad Boy Records seemed suspiciously out of step with his position at Death Row. Some insiders have speculated that Snoop may have seen the feud not as a regional battle, but as an opportunity to realign himself for personal gain. By softening his tone toward Diddy and the Notorious B.I.G., was Snoop positioning himself for a future beyond the chaos of Death Row? And if so, was this calculated move part of a larger strategy to protect himself from the fallout of Shakur's fiery rhetoric? To make matters even murkier, there's the lingering question of why Snoop's relationship with Suge Knight deteriorated so drastically. Once allies in building the Death Row empire, their partnership quickly crumbled after Shakur's passing. Suge has accused Snoop of everything from fraud to betrayal, and some believe that Suge's ongoing hostility stems from secrets only he and Snoop know. Did Snoop's alleged actions during the late 1990s leave Suge feeling betrayed, not just professionally, but personally? And if Suge's claims about Snoop's ownership of Death Row being fraudulent are true, could this be part of a long-standing vendetta between two former allies who know far too much about each other's darkest moments?
If you add all that type of stuff up, and you'll see how the industry been built on the secret rooms.
Of course, this isn't the first time Snoop's actions have raised eyebrows. Back in the 1990s, during the height of the East Coast vs. West Coast feud, Snoop made headlines for his surprisingly friendly stance toward Bad Boy Records. While Shakur was waging war against Diddy and the Notorious B.I.G., Snoop publicly expressed admiration for their work. This led to a major fallout between Snoop and Shakur, one that some believe permanently fractured their friendship. It's been said that Shakur felt betrayed by Snoop's comments, seeing them as a sign that Snoop wasn't fully committed to the West Coast cause. In hindsight, could this have been the moment when Snoop's alleged resentment toward Shakur turned into something far more dangerous? We have to consider the timing. Shakur's rise at Death Row coincided with Snoop's legal battles and a noticeable dip in his career momentum. Shakur was the new king of the label, dominating the charts and commanding attention in a way that made everyone else, including Snoop, feel like they were playing second fiddle. Was Snoop's support for Bad Boy Records a calculated move to distance himself from Shakur's growing dominance? And if so, how far was he willing to go to secure his own place in the industry?
Really, but I've always been like the class clown ever since I was a kid, so I was able to try different things. I was able to be different and not be afraid to go out on a limb.
The final days of Shakur and Snoop's friendship are shrouded in tension and mystery. It's been reported that their last interaction was icy at best. Shakur, furious over Snoop's comments about the East Coast, reportedly refused to speak to him. They were supposed to attend the same fight in Las Vegas, but Shakur made it clear that he didn't want Snoop anywhere near him. Just days later, Shakur was gone. Was this fallout a coincidence, or was it the final chapter in a friendship that had already turned toxic? And if Snoop did harbor resentment toward Shakur, could that resentment have played a role in the events that followed? As we piece together this tangled web of allegations, betrayals, and unanswered questions, one thing becomes clear. The truth is far more complicated than we ever imagined. Snoop Dogg's name, once synonymous with peace and good vibes, is now being dragged into one of hip-hop's darkest mysteries. The accusations are piling up, from his alleged ties to Keefe D to the questions surrounding his ownership of Death Row Records. And with new evidence reportedly coming to light, it feels like the walls are closing in.
When you get to be the age that we at and you get to become as successful as we are, you have to start doing some things that matter for the future.
But here's the real question. How much of this story will ever be fully revealed? Will Keefe D's trial finally expose the secrets that have been buried for decades? Will Suge Knight's accusations gain traction, forcing Snoop to address them head-on? Or will this saga remain a shadowy, unresolved chapter in hip-hop history? We can only speculate, but one thing is certain, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. What do you think? Is Snoop Dogg a misunderstood legend? Unfairly caught in the crossfire of hip-hop's most infamous feud? Or is there more to his story than meets the eye? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates as this explosive story continues to unfold. Until next time, stay curious because the truth is out there and it's only getting closer.